The try-in visit. Once DENTCA receives and scans your impression, you can choose to receive a trial denture, which is a 3D printed prototype, or you can proceed to your final denture. Your anatomically accurate trial denture can be adjusted in a number of ways, and these changes will then be duplicated in your final prosthetics with precision. With this trial denture, you can evaluate the border extension of the flanges, the fit, including maxillary retention, the occlusion, the bite, the midline, the occlusal plane, and tooth display. This allows you and your patient to approve the final aesthetics and phonetics before proceeding with the final denture. The DENTCA try-in is very different than a regular wax tooth setup and a standard wax tooth try-in for traditional dentures. With a wax setup, there's great potential for things to move, to melt, and shift in transit, resulting in a final denture that doesn't represent the patient-approved setup. Additionally, unless you pay an extra fee for a processed record base, the fit of your wax tooth setup typically does not represent the fit of your final denture, resulting in a lack of predictability. And that can be frustrating for you and your patient. With DENTCA's try-in process, it changes all these variables. It simplifies the try-in process and makes it more predictable for both you and your patient. At your try-in visit, you will need articulating paper, heavy body and light body polyvinyl siloxane, a bite registration material, a marker, a slow speed handpiece with an acrylic burr, and of course your camera. Please note, with any changes you make, please take a photograph before and after making these changes. That way you can communicate the changes to DENTCA and they can make sure they correct those in your final. First, we evaluate the fit and retention of the maxillary trial denture. Seat the upper and evaluate the fit. We want to check the overall fit to make sure that it's in the correct plane, that we have the correct acceptable soft tissue support, and overall general aesthetics. We'll also check the retention at this point. If the denture does not seal, we'll check the post-dam. At times, where the post-palatal seal is placed is slightly high, too tall, and that can be flattened with your slow speed handpiece. If that change corrects your retention issue, then that's all you need to do and you can move on to your next adjustment. If the retention is good initially when you seat the denture, but the retention is lost when speaking or swallowing, the denture may be overextended. At this point, you'd want to evaluate the steepness of the patient's soft palate when they say ah, and if it does go down a lot, you'll want to shorten your denture and just eliminate some of that length, and that way you can reevaluate the fit. You'll want to do this slowly so as not to eliminate your retention. If you over-adjust your post-dam, or if you over-shorten your denture accidentally, or if you were initially unhappy with the fit or retention of your try-in, you'll need to adjust this post-dam, flatten it a little bit, and re-impress. In the case in this video, we wanted to improve the retention slightly, so we do a light body wash. To do this, we fill the entire tray with our light body polyvinyl siloxane and border mold the impression. If you want to make a more significant change, you may need to use a heavy body impression material to reposition your denture or to recapture the missing borders, and then follow it with a wash. In either case, you send your try-in with the impression material back to DENTCA and you'll receive another try-in, so your patient will have a second try-in appointment. We will now repeat this procedure with a lower denture. We seat our lower trial denture and evaluate the fit and the stability. If we need to make any changes to this denture, we'll proceed in a similar manner to the upper denture. If you are unhappy with either the fit or stability of your denture, you'll need to proceed with a light body wash impression. Load your trial denture with a light body polyvinyl siloxane, the same as we did for the upper, and reseat your denture in the appropriate position. You'll again want to go through your border molding movements and try to recapture the borders as best as you can in this wash impression. With either the upper or the lower, DENTCA will rescan your new impression and they'll send you a new trial denture. So any changes you want to make to fit or retention, you will need a second try-in visit for your patient. We will now evaluate the bite and the occlusion. If the bite in your upper and lower dentures is open in the anterior, or if it's off in any significant way, you'll want to check to see where your first interference is. If your centric relation record was off at your last visit, your first point of contact will typically be in the second molar region. You'll want to adjust your occlusion until the patient can close into an appropriate position. This may require a lot of adjustment if your bite is significantly open. You'll also want to check to make sure the heels of your lower denture are not interfering with the tuberosity area, so make sure to put your bite paper as far back in the patient's mouth as you comfortably can. Once your patient can close into the appropriate vertical dimension and the appropriate bite position, you'll stop your adjustments. You don't need to achieve even bite marks on either side, you just need to get your patient to close. So don't worry if the patient's back teeth are touching or not. You just want to make sure that the patient's closed all the way down so that you no longer have that anterior open bite. At this point, register your new satisfactory bite with your bite registration paste. You'll send your upper and lower try-in with a bite registration in place back to DENTCA, and they will refabricate. Okay, I'm going to redo the slide. You'll send your upper and lower trial dentures with your bite registration in place back to DENTCA, and they'll correct this bite position in your final prosthetics. With these changes, with closing the bite or reshifting the position, another try-in is typically not necessary. You'll just send everything to DENTCA and you'll get your final prosthetic for your next visit. Even if only a small bite adjustment is needed, you can go ahead and take care of this at the time of try-in. This is a relatively simple procedure, and we do it all the time at our denture seats, but since we're doing the try-in anyway, we may as well correct it now so that those changes can be replicated in the final, and our seat visit will go very smooth and very easy. If there are any areas of your denture that are preventing a complete seat, such as a lingual undercut or an undercut in the maxillary tuberosity, if there are any areas that are rubbing the patient and causing soreness, or that the patient says they feel very long and they're digging into the vestibule, these can be adjusted in the trial stage. Again, you can do this in the final if you skip this optional try-in stage, but it's nice to take care of everything at this visit so when the patient comes back for their seat appointment, it's a very short, easy appointment for both you and your patient. All of these changes will be replicated in the final denture. So anything that you adjust now will be rescanned and replicated in the final. Oftentimes we can identify the overextended border area and adjust that without paste, but sometimes it's not easily identified. At this point you can use a pressure indicating paste like PIP, and when you apply the PIP you want to make sure that the brush strokes are evident when you paint it in your denture. This makes identifying pressure marks very easy. Any areas of high pressure or any areas that are rubbing will remove that paste and you'll see a little spot, and that's where you're going to adjust. Once you've gotten your denture seated and the bite correct, you can proceed with evaluating the aesthetics. Whenever I hand my patient the mirror, I always like to remind them that the trial denture color is going to be brighter than their final denture, and that the gums, of course, will be pink and not white. We want to make sure that we have acceptable tooth display both in our perspective and in the patient's perspective, and we want to have a nice straight incisal plane or a beautiful smile line, and we want to make sure we have good lip support. We'll also check the midline. I'll typically use a piece of floss and have both me and the patient and my assistant make sure that the midline's in place. If the midline is off, mark where the patient's facial midline is on your trial denture with a marker. Once you and your patient have established any changes you want to make in tooth display or tooth position, photograph these from different angles as best as you can and write those changes that you'd like to see on your lab slip. For minor aesthetic changes such as a slight lengthening, a midline shift, or kicking the angle out or pushing the lip support out just a little bit, you will not need another try-in. Again, you can go directly to final, so you don't have to request another try-on denture. If you're making major changes, or you or your patient would feel more comfortable with another trial denture, just communicate this to DENTCA on your lab slip, and you can repeat the steps of the trial denture at your next visit. If you're happy with all the changes that you've made and you feel comfortable proceeding to the next visit, you can now proceed with delivering your final DENTCA denture.